I guess, I didn't know about this, but I mean, I kind of knew because she would walk around with a video camera. And again, I don't like being in front of a camera all that much. I like playing characters and I like doing what I do. But, you know, when she would walk around with this camera, I kind of would get the hell out of there. But she did this as like, she didn't know what she was going to do with it when she was 13. She just liked to document her life and have these things as like for sentimental reasons. But she turned that into a documentary, and she asked me to be a part of it. She asked me to talk about it, or talk about our experience. And I think again, I haven't seen it, but it was a lot simpler then, I think, for our generation than it is for the current generation, being in front of the camera, because nowadays with social media and you know, we didn't have paparazzi, we didn't have people following us, but I feel like the current generation has to watch what they do and say at all times. And for us, we were able to still be kids and make mistakes, a lot of them, because that's what you do when you're young, and never had the you know, the cancel culture kind of breathing down your neck, like, oh my God, can you believe a 16-year-old said that? You know, we all evolve and we all mature and we learn from our mistakes, and I feel like the current generation doesn't have it as easy as we did. Also, we didn't really know how popular we were, other than if we went to a mall tour, because that's what you did when you did Comic-Con. You went to the mall, or you went to a car show, and you know, you had like a little booth or something, and people would come and, you know, tell you how they like watching the show. But nowadays there's, you know, how many likes and how many followers, and you know, the internet can tell you what your numbers were the night of your show and how many people viewed it. There's a lot more pressure. So I'm kind of glad that I went through that. The only thing that I think from my generation that I'm a little envious of the current generation is that they can diversify so much. Whereas if you were a TV actor back in my day, you didn't do film. If you did film, you didn't do TV. And now there's just no boundaries. People cross over. You know, they do TV shows, they do albums, they do modeling, they do commercials. Commercials is a big thing too. But back then, like, if you did a commercial, well, you just gave up your TV career, you know. But nowadays, like, you have a brand, and that's the only part that I'm envious about, is like this generation now they're in everything, which is great, which you should be. You know, it's the entertainment business, so you should make business of it. Any other questions?
Hi, you were talking about the web series earlier, Zach Morris's Trash.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree that he was kind of trash, or do you think they're being too harsh?
No, absolutely, he was trying. Yeah, no, I mean, if you look at it through the lens of what is painted in that web series, I mean, it makes you can agree with it. You can disagree too, but that's not fun. Yeah, I mean, it's from that perspective, it's just so much fun to watch that series, because Dashwell does a great job explaining why he's so trashy. Yeah, we have fun with it, man. It's like anything that I see it as it's still a celebration of the product, a celebration of, you know, the series, the original series, and the characters and stuff. And anytime we're still talking about it, it's good.
You make trash look good. You make trash look good.
All the characters that Morris got through high school. So.
Yeah.
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay, I know you've done a lot of auditions in your career, but can we talk about the best audition you've ever had, even if maybe you didn't get the role, versus the worst audition experience? And maybe you did get the role.
Oh boy. Yeah. I kind of go to the worst. The worst is happening right now. What's happening right now is that we're having to self-tape ourselves, which you used to go in and you meet with a casting director and you'd have a conversation. You talk about the character, you talk about what they're looking for. You would do it. Maybe they obviously tape it there. But what was nice about that is that it was a collaboration in a way. Like, you do it and then give you notes and then you do it again and then you kind of come up with something that you guys were both happy with. Then they'd send that off to the producers or whatever. But now we're having a self-tape and you just don't know where that tape's going to. You don't know if it's going to the casting director, if the producer, or the director will see it. And then to do chemistry reads, we're doing that also on Zoom. I just recently did a chemistry read with, for my show Next Dish, the guy who's playing my best friend. We were trying to find my character's best friend through Zoom. And like, do you have chemistry with this guy? Well, I don't know, we're on Zoom together. But it worked out. I mean, they picked a really good actor and we did have chemistry and stuff. But that right now, it's pretty tough. All auditions are shit. I mean, there's no other better way to say it. And I don't like doing it, but I don't mind it, right? Like this will kind of answer the first part of your question, which the best one. I've had some good ones. One that I remember was for Pitch, where I played Mike Lawson, the thing. And I remember one of the executive producers on it was an executive producer on Franklin and Bash. And we were talking, and he says, "Oh, I'm on this show called Pitch." And I said, "Oh, what's it about?" It's the first female pitcher, and there's a role for you. And I said, "Oh, great." I said, "Well, hook me up." We worked together at Franklin and Bash for 4 years. He was one of the creators. He's like, "Can't do it. You're gonna have to come in here and read and show the creator of that show, which is Dan Fogelman, who is the creator of This Is Us." He says he wants everybody to come in and read it. And when it's things like that, when you know you're going to read for the guy who can pull the trigger of getting you the job, then you're like, cool, I'll go in there and fight. I have no problem doing that. It's when you just don't know, like, who am I doing this for? That's the stuff that gets pretty tough to get motivated for. But when it comes down to like that pitch thing, I was so motivated. I was like, I'm gonna get this, and you don't know that you're gonna get it, but you have to go in with that attitude. And that's exactly what I did. I went in there and you just sell yourself. And I wasn't the character walking in, but we talked about it, and we said, can you gain weight? Could you grow a beard? Could we do all this stuff? And those are things like, you're collaborating in a room, and that's the fun part of our business. But what's going on right now with the self-tape stuff, it's like, there is none of that. There's no like notes that you can kind of work off of. It's just like you're taping yourself in your bathroom, saying lines, and it goes off, and you just never hear anything.
So what's your take on like reimagining like the series, like you guys come back for a reunion with like a new class from and then like you said, self-pride, like Bruce's got a new one where she's the mom now. What's your take on those?
Yeah, I mean it's good for us because we're on something we're getting paid. Having fun. But I mean, and it's I don't know if how many people have seen the reimagining, but it's really good. It's really, really good. It's different. It's not a straight reboot. But I think it's good. I mean,
I've never done it too. Sorry.
Huh?
It's more of a reunion kind of you guys bring back.
Yeah. I mean, it was awkward because I was on Mixed Dish up until I couldn't film while they were filming the first season. And I was going to come on at the very end, and this was like in March. I was going to do 3 episodes back to back of my coverage because they had already finished the season. And then COVID hit, and we took a break, and then we actually went back into production just for my stuff, end of July. And with all the protocols and stuff like that, we were one of the first productions to go back with these new set of guidelines. But what that caused was, wearing masks and shields up until we say, action, take off our stuff, do our thing. The minute they say cut, everything goes back on. You're not allowed to, temperature check. You're not allowed to, be around anybody. And so it was very isolating. We're filming again now, currently. It was okay. I mean, it was because that's the thing about acting too. It's like when there's so much time in between setups and takes. That's where it's fun. You get to hang out with people, you get to talk, and they took, that kind of COVID kind of took that away. So it became a very isolated thing. You just go from your trailer to the set, back to your trailer. I'd never come in contact with anyone. Now we're filming right now. It's a little looser. Like we're able to kind of
Things are opening up.
things are opening up. The crew is still protected, and but for the actors, we're allowed to like now not have to rush off to put your PPE back on. We're able to like hang out and kind of talk. It's fun. It's fun to do some of the actors.
Anyone got it?
First off, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
And then I know that on the podcast you had said that you don't remember a lot of the episodes, but that like the Malibu Sands Beach Club, like
Yeah.
those episodes stood out. Is there any other episodes or experiences that kind of stand out to you, whether it be because of what went on behind the scenes, or you just really like the content of the episode?
Yeah, we've talked about on the podcast. One of the reasons I don't remember, and I'm not the only one. I think when we talked to Tiffany on the podcast as well, and Mario and Elizabeth, and each of us, we don't remember the stories or the plots because that was work, right? But you may not remember something you did at work, but you remember who you went to lunch with that day. And that's kind of how we feel. So the weeks that we were at work, we don't remember much because it was just the same, different dialogue, but it's the same routine. So what we remember is when we went outside of that routine. So if we went to the beach, that was on location. And working in Santa Monica, spoiler alert, we weren't in Malibu. We're actually in Santa Monica.
None of your looks are great for that.
Yeah, we're in Santa Monica. But when we were there, it's like you remember that because it was offset. It was a new experience and new people, and that was fun. So I remember some of those, not the shows, because I'm watching them now and I'm like, whoa, we did that? That's all right. But I remember when we went to Palm Springs, and I remember some of the fun that we'd have there, some of the partying that we did, in a hotel, and sometimes your parents aren't around. I remember the Hawaii, going to Hawaii and hanging out there. Remember the Vegas stuff. I remember us all sitting in a hotel room watching OJ drive off in his white Bronco. I remember production stopped and all of us, we were in hotel rooms filming something. Everybody ran to the available hotel rooms and watched OJ flee. And so I remember that.
Yeah, and now they brought the Broncos back, so.
Yeah.
I thought they should be the sponsor for that.
Good luck with that one. Yeah. So, but those are the things I remember about the show. But if you're fans of the show, listen to the podcast.
Anyone else?
You've been in a number of movies, a number of TV shows, played a variety of different roles. Which are you most proud of? Which sticks out in your mind as the best example of your abilities as an actor?
What best represents my ability as an actor? I think I'm constantly learning, so I could look at something that I did a few years back and cringe. Because I feel like as an actor you constantly have to evolve, or at least I do. That's how I feel. Like otherwise, why try to get another job if I've done it all? Then, But I still enjoy the process. I enjoy working with other people. It is hard for me to watch my work because I want to do it better. I want another shot at it, and there's nothing you can do. It would be like reading, if you were a writer reading some of your own work, and like, man, that structure, I've built upon that and made it better for myself. I looking back in the last few years, pitch, really proud of that. I actually I coached Little League, and one of my assistant coaches hadn't seen it, and we were talking about it, and he binged it in 2 days. And I still was very proud of that work because I was like, I nailed that. I don't say that too often, but I was like, I was pretty good in that show. The Passage was another one that I was really proud of. And those are two shows that I'm bummed didn't go more than one season. Yeah, I think those two are probably the best representation of things that I liked, topics that I loved, obviously baseball and the passage with vampires and stuff. Those were dream jobs, running around shooting guns and chasing vampires. So the other one was playing baseball every day, so it's like, all right. So I wish I could have retired on those two jobs.
Hi.
Hi.
I love you so much in Mixed Dish. I mean, I love you in a lot of things, but right now we've been watching Mixed Dish and you're wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
How long does it take you to kind of get into characters to play Paul, the father, to grow your hair out, things like that?
Yeah, the hair. The hair, we did extensions on the first season a little bit, just because I went from the passage, and I had like 4 months off into going to Mixed Dish, and I didn't know if we were going back for the passage, so it took a while for me to grow my hair. So we did extensions throughout the first season. Second season, we cut my hair, so that was a little bit easier. But in terms of playing that character, it's just, Paul's just such a sweet, caring, loving guy. Nothing like me. So no, but it's pretty easy to play Paul. I mean, the thing with comedies is that you sort of find it through rehearsals and hearing the other actors and things like that. We have table reads, so we kind of get a sense of like the tone of things. We did the table read like a few days before we actually filmed, and it gives the writers a chance to hear the jokes and make adjustments if needed. But doing a comedy like that, it doesn't take too long to switch from me to that character. What was harder, we talked about Pitch. Pitch was a little harder because of how intense that character was, and I actually would take that home with me. And also coming home with this massive beard and 10, 15 pounds heavier and walking through that door, I was not recognizable to my kids or my wife. And scared them at times with some of the sort of intensity that I'm watching. But that, you're playing a character like that, it's hard sometimes to just go from that character to switching it off and going home and being dad. But Paul, he's such a sweet guy that if I took that home, my kids would live with me. It's an easier thing, wasn't it? It's not as intense as some of the other stuff where you really have to be involved. Thank you.
Gentleman's section?
Yes, sir.
Can you talk about research and preparation that you did to portray a mixed race family in the show?
Sure. Research, I mean, I'm mixed race. My mother's Indonesian, my father's Dutch. I didn't really have the stories, obviously, that we have in Mixed Dish, but very aware of them. Something like Mixed Dish, you have such a great team behind it. Obviously, the creator of Blackish, Tracy Ellis Ross, Anthony Anderson, producing. Peter Saji was the creator of Mixed Dish, and Peter Saji was one of the writers on Blackish for over 100 episodes. He's mixed race. So I think for me, the research that I did was just listening and just being open in the room, listening to the other actors, listening to the other characters and the creator, where they're coming from. And just, yeah, I mean, if I had a question, and there were many times that some of the topics that we would hit on Mixed Dish, I was unaware of. I just wasn't, not educated, that's not the right word, but it's not something that I was privy to just because of being labeled as a white man. I didn't have to deal with.
It was not new to you, so.
No, they were new. The stories were new to me, just because, again, it's not something that I have to deal with. And so if I ever felt that I wasn't informed, I would just ask, and we'd have a conversation. There's many times on set that we would, as a crew, collectively, we would sit down and have a discussion about what we were filming, because sometimes more than half of us had no idea about that experience because we're not, well, I'm a person of color, but a lot of other people weren't. But again, because of the way I look, I didn't have to deal with some of the things that our mixed race family did on Mixed Dish. So for me, it was like, and then I would take that actually back home and educate our kids and our family as we were watching the show. So it was good.
Can you give an example of one of those situations that you had to ask or have a discussion?
Oh man. You gotta understand, like once we do, we toss them out because we have to make room for another one. I remember, we would just have like discussions about, something that just came up in my head was back in the 90s. It was so not too long ago, but Ted Danson was dating Whoopi Goldberg, I think, and went to a party in blackface. And we had that in the show, it was written, and all of us were like, wait, that happened? And then you go back and you realize, like, holy shit, that happened. And then we had a discussion of like, okay, but because it wasn't accepted, but it wasn't, we're not as evolved as we were then, was it okay for him to do that? And then we had this discussion about how that, how it's not okay, it was never okay. And, but all of us on the set were like, oh my God, Ted Danson did that. And then, we just had this discussion. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that just came up in my head because, it was so odd to remember back that only 30 years ago that we were still accepting that, or some part of our culture was still accepting that.
Thank you.
As an actor, obviously, it's not of your caliber, but I've had to go home and wash off characters, like literally get in the shower after a final scene's done and just wash the character off because it affected me so emotionally. Have you ever had a character that just was so intense and affected you in such a way that you just had to go home and wash it off and just really spend some time like meditating and just finding the peace to get away from it?
Yeah, there's times. I think it's more so I haven't had to play a character which I had to wash off because it was bad, negative energy on me. But I have beat myself up on shows. For instance, on The Passage. After The Passage, I had to have neck surgery because some of the stuff that we did on that show. We gave ourselves to the stunts and things like that. So I remember going home and thankfully I was working in Atlanta, not around my family, so I could go to my apartment where I was staying and just decompress and take time to heal myself. It's always hard for me to do that when I'm in LA and I have to go back home and be a dad, be a husband, and I don't have the time to kind of like decompress. I have to like literally shut off and go do that. So sometimes it's easier when I'm out of the state and I can sort of compartmentalize things. But I remember